welcome back to the channel, everyone. It's good to be back. It is 2022, which is weird. It's weird. And remarkably, we're not hungover. And that's a thing. At least
you're not hungover. I'm hungover.
So what we're talking about today is an interesting one. One, if you look up in the corner right here, we have the Hacker Hangouts logo, which is it's kind of fun. We're advancing as a stream, as live. I'm pretty excited. Yeah, we did not party hard enough. There we go. That is definitely what happened. But what we're talking about today is we started actually having internal conversations. As you know, during that last minute of stream, typically we start like a whole new conversation. And we started talking about some of the dirty secrets that exist within our industry. And some of them are more obvious ones, things like is college degrees and certifications a big thing? We have other ones like the massive push on YouTube. I'm guessing anyone who saw an ad on the channel is like, wow, I need to get a Nord VPN because that's totally like essential apparently. So I think we're going to talk about VPNs. We'll talk about college degrees. There's also some really interesting things I found as I came into the industry, like the presence of, like we'll say, bad actors on internal networks, how that's kind of assumed in some ways, the downfall of endpoint security protection, in the things we always talk about in major channels, saying like, oh, we need to be worried about Log4j, and oh my gosh, this latest 0 day is going to cripple the entire world. As we talked about last week with Gowrie, everything is broken all the time, and the scariest attacks on networks are not the 0 days, but often the ones that are like the most obvious low-tech hacking ones. And that's kind of where we're going to start today. Feel free to add comments. Oh my goodness, I need to move some of those comments on over so I can see them. But with that, that's probably where I'm going to start us. Let's get some of the easy ones out of the way. College degree. I think that's an important one. And let's even make this a little bit wider. We have computer science, which I think that Gowrie really can probably speak to the best. We have network security, and we'll say like offensive security, which I can talk through. But what's the myth when it comes to college degree? Do you think you actually need one to be in the industry, to be even successful in the industry?
No.
So I would jump in and say,
No.
we're all ready to do this.
I'm going to let you guys go, and then I'll pick up behind you guys.
Right. So speaking as somebody who does not have a college degree, it's not mandatory for you to be able to get into the field. So if you've got the passion, if you want to go learn, and it also depends on what field specifically you're trying to get in with your employer. Some employers really hammer on that hard. Other employers are really cert-based. Other folks are completely fine with you being and learning by yourself. And then as long as you can demonstrate your knowledge, then they're good. And I'll sling it over to whoever's next.
Also, before we move on, can we just appreciate your fancy new shirt? Like, you always have the coolest shirts on, but this one's yours. This one is one you created.
Yep. So we actually did the hacker logo glyph in the center as the heads of each one of the individuals. And yeah, so I'm getting ready to throw that image up online. So one of the things with this new year is new look and new content putting up online. So I'm super excited, man. I got the stickers a while ago, and I'm like, yo, where's the shirt? They're like, oh, oops, sending it rush. I'm like, it's here in time. Yay! Only planned it 3 weeks ago.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing. Yeah, we got a couple people commenting. Happy New Year, by the way, for everyone who's coming in. Gula, what's your thoughts on college degrees?
College degrees are a way of extracting money from children and or their parents. You can learn stuff from them. I've gone to college. I still go to college. I take college classes all of the time. But college to me, learning to me is learning something. I don't go to college to get a piece of paper. I don't have my degree, and a lot of people would consider me successful. I go to college to learn. I take classes to learn something that I want to learn. It's not my goal to get a piece of paper at the end that says, hey, you learned something. No, I don't need to prove to you or anyone else what I've learned. I just need to prove to myself what I've learned, which is also why I generally don't do homework, is because why do I need to prove to you that I've learned something? Give me a damn test. If I pass the test and prove that I have the knowledge, great. But homework is just busy work to keep kids off the street.
See, I have a little bit of a different look when it comes to college degrees, and I think there's a couple different aspects to it. And then I think probably what will end up happening is me and Gowrie will go back and forth with this. One is my college. I did get a college degree. It is in network security. I actually went to 3 different universities because I wanted my piece of paper to say network security on it. And as I bounced across different universities, I found a couple fundamental things. And again, I went to university like, oh goodness, like 20 years. Oh gosh, no, was it that much? No, like 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. So like network security was like totally a new thing. And any of the teachers teaching it were ones that failed in the industry. And I don't mean that like again, I had some really good teachers, like a couple really good ones who were adjunct professors, but there's so much money to be made in the industry and teachers don't get paid enough. So like, why would you teach if you had the knowledge to be successful? And again, adjunct professors, there's lots of exceptions to this. There's people who love teaching and things like that. Like I'll cover myself there. But here's the thing. That piece of paper made it so I could get a job at GE. They would not hire me unless I had the degree. In big enterprises, you need a degree. And then to move up in those companies, you need an MBA. You need other higher level degrees. Also, if you're going into education, education institutionalism loves institutionalism. So like the education bits of those you need in order to be successful there. As far as knowledge goes and what did I gain from it, I gained way more from my roommates than I ever did in courses. Like when I was at UAT in Arizona, I lived with seven hackers in one house. Like there's a whole story in and of that itself, but like Leap Bunny, Existence, like some of these people helped run Darknet. Like those were roommates of mine. So I learned hardware hacking and reverse engineering, and those were all from roommates. So sometimes the college experience, we'll say, is more important about the interactions and the relationships more than the degree. Like you have people when they're doing their degree who are passionate individuals who all they want to do is learn at that point. Gowrie, I'll send it to you though.
So,
woo, you're weirdly small. That's on my end. I can fix it right here. Yeah. Boop, there we go.
So I'm a little bit of a strange case because I'm going to try and be short-winded here. I was in the Navy for 6 years. I did network security in the Navy. And then right before I got out, I spent about a year doing reverse engineering and understanding how exploits are made and things like that as part of training. And that's when I decided that this is the job I want to do, and I don't want to do this job in the Navy. So I got out and I went to college and I got a computer science degree. I have a BS and an MS in computer science from Northeastern. Go Huskies. Yeah, and then I joined the workforce doing reverse engineering, and now I largely work in virtualization, making tools for security work. My opinion, before I had a degree, was that degrees were a piece of paper, a check in the box that lets you get better jobs and make more money. My opinion about 2 semesters in to college was, I have no idea what I'm fucking talking about. And I should just go along for the ride and figure out where it takes me, because I was being told by just about, like, it was 50-50. I was being told by anyone who was in the industry, degree's not really needed, everything this, blah, blah, blah. And I was being taught by those people. And then as soon as I got out of that environment, I went to college, I was like, wow, I never would have thought about computers in this way had it not been given dedicated time outside the workforce to sit down and study a bunch of random things. And I think that is the biggest value of going to a university is when you're in work, you are going through and trying to rapidly pick up skills in areas that are all driven towards, like goal driven. When you're in college, they have a certain set of things they're trying to teach you, and they have dedicated things tailored towards teaching you that, set up for you to do in labs and in projects. And that was incredibly valuable. Mm-hmm. Right. And now on the other side of my degree, I tend to agree that you don't need a degree, because the dirty secret, if you will, is that everything that I learned in university can be learned online, and there's a ton of YouTube courses, and there's, just go pick up a tech manual and start reading, pick up some amount of programming. But what will be very difficult to learn if you want to do harder work, stuff like compiler development and things like that, the things that will be harder to pick up are those kind of computer science theory things, right? Compiler theory is a course, and that is very difficult. So depending on what you're trying to do, if you want to be a pen tester, there's no reason to get a degree. Like there's all kinds of courses out there that will teach you how to use the tools to be an effective pen tester, and you don't need to spend the $200,000 to go get a degree from a fancy university if that's what you want to do. If you want to be a hardware developer, a low-level systems developer, or even a compiler developer, a developer at a place like VMware or Microsoft doing operating system development, I would highly suggest getting a degree, because otherwise you're going to hold yourself back in the industry because, for lack of a better way of putting it, people will look down on you. But there's actual value there.
The thing I'd counter to with pen testing specifically is there was another video I did on talking about becoming the profit maker. Like, your goal is to become a profit maker. And I think there's two pieces here too. Is when I started again, I'm no longer at GE. I wasn't there that long. Is they had no technical track. There was no way to become high level, like a C level, without going. I think we might have a echo. Someone's clicking on the audio. Maybe a weak connection, but I'll keep talking through it. You don't have a technical track. There's no way to get to the C level without becoming a manager, a people manager. So now there is, and they've tweaked that a lot. So now the technical track doesn't necessarily require a degree. But now that I've moved over to the consulting realm, because ultimately my goal is I run a consulting company. I hire people with the main intent to make money off of them. And I don't really care of whether or not they have a college degree if I can make money off of them. So when we look through interviews and we talk through people, well, that might be something we go, oh, okay, cool. It's good that they have that. I've never done hiring off of that. Typically, and I'm a lead. You can see I'm leading them. It's almost like I have an idea what I'm trying to move towards, which is certifications. Are certifications a replacement for a degree, or do they add on top of it? And I think I'll mention this with the OSCP and the OSCE, which are probably the most known within the pen testing space. Oftentimes for me, those became way more important than a degree, because there's too many universities. There's not a standard curriculum when it comes to network security. So very frequently, what I would do when I was at GE is just simply look for OSCP, OSCE, and the resumes, because you get 10,000 resumes, and you'd grab that was an easy search term. So in some industries, your certifications are massively important. Gator, you might be one of the best ones to talk about certifications, but it looks like Gulo, you had something to say.
Yeah, go for Gulo.
So I agree with Gowrie. There are certain parts of college that are worth it, and there are certain areas in certain fields that having a college degree can help you out. But then again, everything that you're doing, or everything that all the classes you're taking in college, you can pretty much take for free. You have MIT and Stanford, and all these places are now offering all of their courses online, and a lot of them are offering them for free. You don't get a degree at the end, you don't get the piece of paper, but you can develop the knowledge for it. As far as some of the security related fields, as he was talking about pen testing, going to get a security related degree, sorry, Silk, a lot of the information that they teach you is outdated by years decades. And that's just how long it takes for them to adopt and for them to learn something new, and then build a curriculum around it, which is completely fine. As far as certifications go, well, and then to Silk's point about working with larger companies and enterprises, I've worked for Fortune 50 companies. I've worked for governments all around the world doing pen testing. I've worked for banks, and I've worked in a lot of different industries, and I never completed my degree. And technically, if I would have completed my degree, it was in psychology and theology. So it wasn't even anything technical, but when I interview, I don't care if you have a degree. That's something HR cares about. As far as certifications go, oh wait, Taylor made a good point on something is the weight of the degree against the regulation of the industry. So if you require a degree to get the job, not just because the job says you need a degree, but specifically you have to have one, like doctors, lawyers, architects, those types of things. Same thing goes for certifications. If your job requires it, if you're working for like an MSP and you require a certain level of certification to keep all of your partners and channels and your levels with everyone you're working with, and yes, you need certifications, but certifications are just a test. And back in my day, those tests meant something, and you would actually study and you would learn the information associated with them. Now, even when I was looking at doing all of my certifications, there were classes specifically designed for them. And then a year or two after I started, they started creating boot camps for them. So they would do 3 days of walking you through how to pass the test. If you come to me and you have a certification on your resume and I ask you questions associated with the certification but aren't part of the test and you can't answer them, you're less than worthless to me, because to me that's lying on your resume. If you don't know the info, no.
So this is basically the dirty secret, right? And Taylor brings up a good point in the regulations. This industry is not regulated. The only ones that I know of are that the government has a number of requirements for positions that are actually written in black and white that says like, oh, if you're going to be a defensive analyst, you need these certifications. And what is the big one? SANS. Good on SANS for getting SANS that written into because they're going to make a lot of money off of that, right? But
definitely
do I actually
a lobbyist at work?
Yeah, but really, like I think it's like DoD 8570 is the requirements document that lists out what you have to have, and it like tracks with SANS courses. And I'm not saying SANS teaches bad things; they don't. Like I've taken a couple of their courses, and they're fine, but recognize them for what they are, which is exactly what Gulo just said. So like the dirty secret of this industry, and I was going to bring this up later, was by and large, everyone's just making it up as they go. Right? No, seriously. The imposter syndrome is a huge rampant issue in the industry. And it's because a lot of times you are going to come up against problems that no one else has really dealt with, or they've dealt with it and you're not going to find them on Google. So you have to get into this habit of just being able to dig up weird, random things on the internet, read technical manuals, and then actually open debuggers and figure out what the problems are, or, poke around these things. A lot of the issues that we deal with in this industry are explicitly problems that maybe some other people have solved, but maybe not specifically in the way that you need it solved because you have a special thing that you're trying to do on your network. So it's like everyone in this industry has imposter syndrome.
The thing you mentioned too, which is so funny to me, is you're like, we're ultimately making it up. And here's the thing is, at one point we go, we're going to fix this with regulation. We're going to fix this with compliance. So we come out with things like NIST and ISO and all these other things. All right. You want to hear one of the dirtiest secrets when it comes to compliance? Like, ultimately, you have the compliance. Let's use NIST. Specific one from NIST. NIST has a gazillion controls. They have one control for SDLC, Security Development Lifecycle. In the actual control is something along the lines, like if someone wants to pull it up, it is legitimately, you need an SDLC. Like that is the control. So like if you grab a piece of toilet paper, smear it on your back end and go, yep, that's our documented SDLC. It all comes down to the auditor to go, yep, that's an SDLC and it is documented. Do you follow it? Oh yeah, we follow it. Check. Like think about the complexities there is within SDLCs. Like you could have one built on this stack or AWS, Azure DevOps. Like every one of these is considered an SDLC. But there's no security in that. That's more like that's the development life cycle. The security aspects are like, oh, well, is there any security which happens? Like you have a CI/CD pipeline, but is there any security in it? Like this is like a massive dirty secret within compliance. There's one check mark for all of SDLC.
Our testing step is to have our intern open the program and poke around until it breaks.
So
and that's documented and it fits with the regulation. So check, like it all I had verbal arguments with when we were doing QSA, like PCI work. I had verbal arguments saying there is no way this adheres. And it would be like textbook. You would go, do they have a policy? Yes. Check mark. Is it a good policy? So we came up with this whole category when we do work, which was what is the maturity of it? And then we would have like this separate piece that we wouldn't make it its way into the official report of just like, what is the maturity of that?
Gulo's dying to Gulo.
No,
Go ahead, Gulo.
You cannot care about your job. You cannot care about the quality of work that you do or the companies you work with. I've worked in the industrial section, manufacturing for decades, and ISO 9000 and I think it's 9001 is the best example of certifications. All you have to do is document what you do and do what you document, and you're 9001 certified. It doesn't matter what's in that document. They have a couple of things like you need to have a backup policy, and you put one line. I did this for years. I was in charge of IT. What's your backup policy? I back servers up. That was it. And then all I had to do was occasionally go back those servers up, and I was in compliance. All you do is document what you do and do what you document, and that's how you become ISO certified. That's all these industries are. They're a petty functionary with a clipboard walking around making checkboxes on things. It doesn't matter.
Gator, and then I'll pull it back.
Issue, so going to the whole making sure that you're compliant versus secure or you're doing due diligence, this goes back to some of our previous streams that we've talked about, talking about industry standards. And unless you have these other regulations in place, like, oh, we're supposed to be going to this NIST standard, people interpret it differently. Even inside of your own organization, people interpret it differently. And that's where it can get really sticky, to where I've been in a very similar situation to where, oh, I was working for X company and they're saying, is this box checked? I'm like, no, it's not. Well, technically we have a policy for it. So is the box checked? No, it's not implemented, and it's not on a POAM or a plans, actions, and milestone. It's not implemented. There's nothing. But we said we're going to make this, right? No! And then they just pushed right on through, and they got their authority to operate. And it's like, no, I'm not okay with this.
Well, often with a lot of these compliances, the goal, like you're considered compliant if you're moving towards compliance. And the ultimate thing is you're always moving towards compliance. Like right. And I'm gonna, go on, Gulo, and then I'm gonna move us on.
I've got one quick point for this. Hire one of these three guys. If you see one of the three guys on this stream's resume, hire them. They actually care about their jobs, and they're not going to just check a box. They're going to verify that things are working. I am the same way, but I'm an asshole. You shouldn't hire me because I will drive you crazy. I will fix everything, but I will piss everyone off while I do it.
So I'll bring it back because I think this is a logical segue to probably another big dirty secret, which is you fall into, if you are in security, if you're in any aspect of cybersecurity, and this is like probably a big, bold statement, which I haven't really thought out too much, but it's on the internet, so it's 100% true all the time, is you fall into one of two categories if you're in security. You are either the profit maker, you are a consultant, you are the product. The other side of things is you are overhead. If you are security inside a big enterprise and they don't sell security, then you are overhead. And here is where it becomes like a massively dirty secret is ultimately if you work at, if someone throw out a drink manufacturer.
Coke.
Perfect.
Sprite, Pepsi. Whatever.
Pepsi, whatever. What Pepsi? We'll do Pepsi because I in case this conversation goes, I don't like Pepsi. I'm sorry. Anyone, Mountain Dew is good. I like Mountain Dew, but it is.
Hey,
just,
Mountain Dew.
yikes.
Ooh, you harshed on my vibe.
I like
Balls.
Mountain Dew. I'm good with Mountain Dew. I'm fine. Mellow Yellow, I'm not into.
Baja
It's not a thing.
Blast
But
is where it's at, man.
ultimately, it's just coffee. Just copious amounts of so much coffee. Like, woo.
All right, Pepsi.
All right, so going on with it is ultimately like if you're not the profit maker, like your overhead. So like ultimately going back to the drink metaphor is if you are in security at Pepsi, your only goal and in security is to sell more Pepsi. Like ultimately, like that is all of security's job is to make sure Pepsi gets sold. It's not to make the company more secure. It's to sell more Pepsi. We're going towards NIST compliance because it allows us to go over these contracts, which can get us more money. Like you're effectively overhead, and that is a really hard thing to stomach. That's why I got out of the enterprise and went to the consulting realm because I liked being the profit maker. I liked being able to share my opinion and say, "Hey, I care about security. I want you to fix this." And it was seen as consulting versus they go, "Great, that's wonderful, but it doesn't help us sell more sugar water."
In
Right.
business, you have a cost center and you have a profit center. Most technology sits inside a cost center. You cost the company money. Everything you implement costs the company money, unless you are a specific technical company or a specific security company. If you're doing IT work, you are almost always a cost center, and everything that you do and implement costs the company money. Yes, you can increase productivity, you can shrink margins, you can do those things, but you are always a cost center. You're always spending money. Profit centers, yeah, you move towards profit, but this goes back to a point I made the last stream. I don't necessarily care what the goal is, what the profit is. I care about getting the job done and doing the best at that job that I can. And generally my goals make money because I'm good at what I do. But there are things that I work on that don't actually make money. They don't necessarily help the company. They help solve problems that exist that the company doesn't care about. We don't have a work shortage. We have a shortage of work that makes profit. And if all we do is focus on profit, then we're not solving all the problems. We're just solving problems that make money. And that's all everyone cares about.
It's kind of funny because it sort of goes back to the compliance thing, but this issue of, everything you do at a job for the most part is going to be goal driven. As both of them said, like if you're not doing something that sells more Pepsi, you're a cost center. And most of the things that would really make things more secure are really, really hard. Like they take a long time and a lot of effort, and there's not a whole lot of progress, like visible progress in between. So it can take, like, the way I like to put it is sometimes it takes me a few months to get a design of a new component like fully formed and done, because I have to sit down and I go through multiple drafts and maybe even multiple drafting attempts to make a certain component within my software. And then finally at the end, I have to scrap everything that I did, completely redo it because I've gathered all of the information that I needed. And oh, where was I going with this, man? Like there's not a whole lot of progress that I can show in between of these steps. It's like, oh, I'm going to do like a week of coding, and then I'm going to have like a week or two of assessing that code. And they're like, I'm producing artifacts, but it's mostly like performance artifacts and things like that. And during that time, if anyone were to walk up to me and be like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm coming up with tests to figure out whether or not this was a good idea. And you're like, what do you mean whether or not it was a good idea? Why did you spend the time if you didn't already know it was a good idea? I'm just like, well, I work in R&D. That's what I do. The research portion. But like that period, like as Silk said, I view my job as very much to drive the company forward and, find new ways that we can impact the overall industry and help the profit centers that we have. And so I am actually, my goal is to do profit center work, but that intermediate time where not a lot is getting done, it's testing and assessment and figuring out design work. any, middle manager could walk up and be like, this person isn't working. What are they doing? And a lot of that stuff is invisible. It's really difficult to, it's difficult to keep your head in that space too sometimes. So,
well, and part of this goes back to, I'll throw it out there as pen testing. Like your job is R&D. Like all of pen test, I was pen test. I still am a pen tester, but like for a huge part of my career, all I focused. Now that I'm like running my own company, I have other responsibilities too. But when I was doing pen testing, like ultimately your job was to bash your face against a keyboard until something happened. So like if you're trying to break into the network, break into a company from outside, what are you working on today? It's like that old adage, like I came up with 1,000 ways. I cannot break into their network. And this is why we talk about like methodologies. Methodologies are incredibly important. Again, when it comes down to networks, you like network security, network penetration testing, network layer stuff, it is remarkably analytical, more in the mathematics. You follow these things. You are looking for 500,000 vulnerabilities across all the services. That is cut and dry what network layer is. Application is much more like art. You're looking at the OWASP methodology, but you're looking at that throughout a bunch of different components within their application. So you're bashing your head against this thing with zero progress. What did you do today? Nothing. I had zero progress, and that's so weird in the industry when you think about it. Like you can have days where nothing gets accomplished,
dude,
but that's
months.
your job.
You could have months.
So
Gator had something. Gator had something first. Let's jump to Gator.
So to your point on making sure that you're either in a cost center or a profit center, that's a huge secret. That just because you have everybody's got to get their foot in the door, right? So it's usually in help desk. It's something to get into IT, and then they start working their way to cybersecurity. Some folks jump straight into it. One of the secrets is everybody's got these skeletons in the closet, meaning that if you don't know if you're going into a cost center versus if you're going into a profit center, that is absolutely going to directly affect how much change and how much change and money you have to be able to work on security in that job. So if you don't know that going in, you really got to research to find out, is this going to line up to where if you're just going there for experience, or if you're going there to try to help change and make effect to be able to make somebody more secure? Because there have been jobs that I've taken, they said, hey, we're going to go do this, and funding dried up, so we're no longer going to go down this path. And it's like, okay, you've got to have a goal for you to be able to actually not only advance your career, but make sure that you're not just working a job, but you're working a job to also gain knowledge for yourself as well. And Gulo, what's going on?
Okay, I have a bunch of comments. To Gator's point of that's standard project management. You need to have stakeholders. If you start a project, you need to have somebody who champions that and goes and fights for it. I start projects all the time because I'm at the top level. I'm not an executive, but there's no one technically above me that does technical things. I report to business people. I don't report to any technical person. So I work on pretty much whatever project that I want to work on, pretty much wherever I go. And that's just because I'm at the echelon, I'm at the top level, and I can do that. But I also have to champion those projects as well. I have to say, this is taking up my time, this is costing the company this amount of money, and I have to fight for those things. If that person doesn't exist, your project will fail, period. You'll have somebody that comes in and they'll just cancel that project. Now, that also ties into a point that Silk made of advancement. I don't advance into management positions. I don't like managing people. I don't like taking care of things that live because bad things happen. So I'm a wrench turner. I'm a monkey. I am always going to be a wrench turner. I'm always going to be sitting there building, designing, and fixing things rather than bossing people around. I will mentor people. I will lead people, but I will not manage people.
Yeah,
and then to Gowry's.
So I was going to say that point I made, though, was at GE, they didn't have a technical track. So the only way to move into management was if you wanted to manage people, where now there was technical tracks. And most companies now have a technical track as you can be super technical and never have direct reports. And you can get to the same level as CISO. You have the Chief Information Security Architect, no direct reports. And then the CISO, who is managerial, who leads the direct reports, hand in back.
That's fair enough. And then to Gary and Silk's point of, yesterday I came up with a solution. This month I've been on vacation. I've been sick. I've been a bump on a log and pretty much worthless. And at the company I contract for, I have to hit X amount of hours every month. And I've done a little bit of work, but I don't think I've done nearly enough. And yesterday I came up with a solution to the design that I was working on that pays my entire salary for next year. I can go over by like 100 hours or 200 hours next year easily and still have completely paid my entire salary. And I've done almost nothing other than the hour that I came up with the idea yesterday and the 2 hours I spent researching it to make sure that it was viable. And that pays my entire salary for the entire time.
So where's the dirty secret there? And then I'm going to move us to the next part.
The dirty secret is you don't always have to be productive. You have to follow your path to solve the problems. If you're designing and architecting something, you may, as Gary said, you may waste weeks or months staring at the wall, arguing with yourself. Okay, staring at sheep, guys, men who stare at sheep. You may think you're wasting that time, or other people may think you're wasting that time, but you're iterating, you're coming up with solutions and arguing with yourself. Unless you have a team to argue with, that's what you have to do to come up with these designs that you then implement that take almost no time to implement. So designing is way more difficult than implementing, in my opinion.
So I remember back in my Navy days, before I had a degree, before I was doing what you would consider professional software development, I was picking up software, and I was one of few people in our shop that actually knew how to do some amount of programming, which is just with Python. And I remember my managers at the time did not understand what I did. They knew that it made the shop better, so they let me do it, and they were like, just let him do his thing. But they did not understand what I did, so they got really frustrated sometimes, where I would come in, I would sit down, and I would literally stare at the computer and just think for a day. Just think for like 8 hours. And like, yeah, of course my mind wanders, but everyone's does. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, And I had a manager once that was just like, why aren't you working? Why are you just sitting there staring? And I'm like, and I had this moment of realization, and I said this, and they got really mad at me when I said this. I was like, I am working, but you bring up a good point. You can't tell the difference between me working and me not doing my job well, right? As an analyst, if I don't find something, there are two possibilities. Either I'm missing something, or there's nothing there to find. And you can't tell the difference. You're not an oracle. If you knew the difference, I wouldn't be working on that thing. You would be, right? So like to Gulo's point, like one of the dirty secrets, and this is more for the manager, less for the developers and the security engineers out there, is your people are probably working. Your people are probably working harder than you imagine, because I do some of my best work laying in bed thinking about the problems that I'm trying to solve for 3 hours and losing sleep over it and not being in the office.
Well, that's the thing. I think that's the beauty when you find someone who loves this industry, loves the industry. And this is one of the biggest drivers for me starting my own thing, was that when I now get paid for having those thoughts in the shower, again, and I cannot say this enough. There has been so many times I'll be in the shower, go to my, reach out, grab my phone, and then start typing an idea in drafts, because you are always thinking, you're always doing it. Yeah, nailed it, Gulo. But you're always thinking. Here's the counter though to all of this. I did a video. Again, it's just like the advertisements. Here we go. Today's stream is brought to you by Coffee, our sponsor today. Oh gosh, no, absolutely not, under no circumstances. But I did a video talking about my grandma says your network secure. This is maybe software, you can show forward progress, but within penetration testing specifically, this is the plague of the industry. Like, legitimately, there's not a whole lot of fix. Like, there are ones, like having a methodology checklist saying we checked for all of these things, doing certification letters saying we certify that this work was done, all important things. But ultimately, if I set my grandma down in front of a terminal who's 97, she's a great writer. She's been writing her entire life. She can write a report, but she can't do testing. But she can do testing on your external network perimeter. Say, oh, I didn't find anything. Write an amazing report saying there's nothing there, and your network is fully secure because that's what the report says, and that will pass every compliance. This, for me, is the most terrifying thing in the industry, and probably the dirtiest secret I know within penetration testing, that there is not a good way to know if the person is a very good tester, a mild tester, like a junkie tester, without actually having like someone sit over their shoulder and check for the first couple assessments. It's really frustrating.
But who's watching the Watchmen?
Exactly. It is like one of the dirtiest secrets. But we've now mentioned NordVPN a couple times. All right, Gowrie, I'll go to you. And then I swear we need to talk VPNs.
No, I was just NordVPN. Like, go ahead, but bring the topic in.
Okay, VPNs. Holy crap, man! It has been it's been an epidemic on top of a pandemic of VPNs. Every single ad on YouTube, very possibly for my channel, has been NordVPN, and not beating up on Nord. There's like a gazillion of them. And ultimately, the question is, are VPNs needed? Do you have to have a VPN to be secure? Like that, and here's the thing is, I'll say the first comment, which is VPNs do serve a purpose. They do serve a very, very specific purpose, especially when it comes to testing. It changes your IP address. So if you want to watch Asian movies or whatever it is, which requires you to have an Asian IP address, bam, that is the only purpose. There is zero security gained from a VPN. Zero, none. There is none whatsoever. In fact, it adds insecurity because now if you like tunnel your DNS entries over there, like that might be leaking information. Like a lot of them will do it by default unless you do like DNS over HTTPS to like Cloudflare or any of these other services. The only way I use a VPN. I use WireGuard. It's awesome. And I do it to come to my home network because I have like this IP address allow listed on a bunch of different things. Holy crap. I'll leave it off there. Someone else take on over.
Okay. So not just that, like not does it not add security. When you say, oh, you can get access to Asian movies or, European movies or whatever, bullshit. Complete fucking bullshit. It is so frustrating because what happens is like I actually went out and tested this because I paid for a month and I forget if it was Nord or it was one of the other ones, but it was a reasonable service. It was the ones that were advertised, which like I have a rule: anything that's advertised, I don't buy because if you have to advertise, it's probably a crappy product. Probably. I tried this. I went out, I got a VPN, I went on to Netflix, and Netflix was like, you can't use a VPN with Netflix. Get the fuck out. Like, you're like, and all of these services, and it's a whack-a-mole, but all of these services do a whack-a-mole of hitting those IP addresses and knowing what IP addresses like Nord and these other services are using for their exit points for this VPN, and then shutting down access from those things. So all of those all of those things that are like, oh, hackers are going to steal your passwords and view your traffic. And also if you want to watch the videos on Netflix that are available in no, bullshit. Like the everyday person has no reason to use a VPN. No reason.
Hold on. I want to mention one thing, which is I everything you say completely agree with. The exit but here's the thing is on Tor as well. If you use Tor, the exit nodes are known. Like exit nodes on Tor are known, VPN proxies. And here's the thing is Netflix can find them very easily, and they have automated it at this point where they have a Nord account. Someone at Netflix has a Nord account where all they do is go through, grab all the endpoints and add it to their block list. All right, Gator.
So
or Gulo.
Go into Gulo.
Go Gulo.
So, okay, I have another argument for VPNs that we're kind of glossing over, and that argument is I can tunnel all of my traffic. So, when I design and build VPNs for companies, and when I use my own personal VPN, I do a VPN on a stick, which means that all of my traffic goes over that VPN. I send 100% of my traffic. That means that if I'm on Gowry's network, my traffic is now tunneled and encrypted, and I can't connect to any device, and Gowry can't connect to my device from his network. Yes, it can be a pain in the ass if there's something else on my network that I need to have access to while I'm on the VPN, but I do this mainly for hotels. I don't want, if I connect to a hotel Wi-Fi, I hop on my VPN that tunnels all of my traffic, and I can't connect to any local devices in that hotel whatsoever because it's not on my VPN tunnel. So all of my traffic is secured, and I don't have to worry about incoming or outgoing things specifically to that hotel.
It doesn't
That's
hide
why
your
I use a VPN.
So a couple things here is you bring up valid points. You absolutely, like, there is times you can use a VPN, but the two counterpoints is, one, it does not hide your local system on the network. Your local firewall can do that. If you're running a VPN locally, it doesn't make your host system invisible. And I don't think that's necessarily what you were saying, but just to call it out, your local system is not like invisible the moment you kick on your VPN. That's your local firewall. Again, assuming that's kind of what you meant. Number two, though, if I bring my laptop, again, sponsored by Apple. No, it's absolutely not. I'm going to just start inserting random sponsors into our stream. Like, again, they don't know this yet.
Make them good ones instead. So please, for God's sake.
Brought to you by CoffeeCon. Come visit us at DEF CON.
There we go.
Which Gator lovingly does for us. But the other thing is, if I bring my laptop to Starbucks, I sit down, not sponsored by Starbucks, and I sit down at Starbucks, I can surf the entire web, and guess what? It's still secure. Like anywhere, HTTPS secures it. No, the URL is not, ever since HTTP 2, your URL is not, like, that is encapsulated in the packet, and that's encrypted over SSL. Like, you can use it. The only thing which is going to leak possibly is your DNS requests. If you're using their DNS server, then that's going to pull the requests. But ultimately, you don't need a VPN on public Wi-Fi. Like, your computer is no more secure using a NordVPN on theirs. And that also being said is it doesn't protect you against malware. If anything, and this is a couple of them which said, oh, we'll protect you against like clickjacking attacks and things like that. What they were essentially doing, they were terminating your SSL connection. So you would have to install their SSL certificate. They terminate your SSL certificate and then add headers within HTTP responses, which like prevented clickjacking. But like, who would let them? That essentially makes all of your traffic plain text for them. And that's passwords. Every password goes over plain, or most passwords go over plain text, which is encapsulated in SSL. You can do this just by like opening up Firefox, right-clicking, inspector. Like, yeah. So that's my opinion. Who else wants to talk about VPNs? And I have a couple other topics for us.
Okay, so VPNs are constantly things that are pushed all the time on YouTube, right? The problem is, do you actually know who owns your VPN? If you decide to go with Nord, if you decide to go with whoever else, I've just posted a couple articles that we, between myself and Digital, have gone through and been reporting on for the last 2 years running the Hull on Network podcast, to where they're constantly either getting hacked, they're constantly selling out, including selling your information to advertisers, or being bought out by a shady-ass company who is there to constantly just scrape your data. So instead of going and just buying a VPN, you need to find out why you're trying to buy a VPN, for what purpose. Like what you guys have gone through and said is, hey, I want to be able to go watch my waifu on Netflix or whatever else from Asia or whatever else, right? So this is, if that's your goal, you're going to have a different reason to go for a certain VPN. Go buy Crunchyroll, you cheap bastards. Or you can go through.
The thing I'll hand it right back to you is, like, if you don't use any VPN service, like legitimately don't use any VPN service, go to DigitalOcean, Linode, AWS, Azure, AWS free tier for a year. Spin up a micro instance, drop that server wherever you want, and use that. 100% you have AWS bandwidth, and at least there you know exactly what you're doing. Use Lightsail on AWS, $5 a month, or I think it's $250 now, and it's even cheaper than their services. Gator, how are you?
So to your point there, depending on how and why you're going and doing this, you can put on that tinfoil hat or entire suit with, are you going to make sure that your VPN service isn't in bed with the Five Eye companies when it comes to surveillance, or 14 Eyes, to where there are very few and far between VPN services that actually don't do any logging. And then you actually can only check that if they get brought to court. And then they find out, oh, these guys were actually logging and they gave X amount of information. So that's why, while I like a couple of them individually, I still go through and spin up my own, just like what you said. So, and I've been doing that for years, to where I've got a DigitalOcean droplet, I've got a Linode droplet, and depending on which use case, I've got separate networks set up to where I pivot through that and then back to my network, instead of going through somebody else's. But my use case is, I need to get back to my home network. I'm not trying to watch waifu shit from waifu, it's from Asia. Mine is a very different use case. So
yeah.
And
so
that's
like when do you use VPNs? And an example for this is if you're doing anything work related and you're trying to keep things really well segregated. So like if you have a development network and you're doing development, but you have people doing work from home, very bad idea to just put all of your stuff up in public cloud, right? So like you have a private VPN that you connect to, and all of those services are isolated within that VPN, and you control the gates in and out, right? That's when you use a VPN. Or, you know, if you're a less than, if you're a black hat person, right? Well, whatever the hell that means, and you're doing illegal crap, like that's. But so the funny thing is, like I've talked about this before. Like, when would I use Tor? Literally never. And the problem with Tor in particular is that you can tell who is accessing entry nodes if you have a tap on at the connection centers, like at the ISPs, right? So you know who's connecting to entry nodes. If you know, like this actually happened in Boston. Somebody called in a threat. I think it was MIT or Harvard or one of those. Somebody called in a threat or sent in a threat via email or something over Tor. And Tor is supposed to be, the VPN to end all VPNs, essentially, like privacy and anonymity, all of that stuff. Somebody called in a threat. And the FBI was like, well, we have records of who was connected to Tor at that time from these areas. And there's only 3 people in the area that were connected to Tor at the time this email was sent. So why don't we just go talk to all 3 people? And so they went and talked to all 3 people. And the guy who did it was just like, yeah, it was me. All he had to do was just say, like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But he was like, yeah, it was me. Because he freaked out. And I think he was trying to get out of test. I don't even remember. This was like 4 or 5 years ago. But it's just like, even with Tor, they're using this highly anonymous, quote unquote, VPN network. And they have what I like to call a mononymity problem, where if you're the only person who's anonymous, you're not anonymous.
So the way that you do it, and yeah, I don't care. So the way that you do it is you have botnets that you connect to. If I'm doing something that's sketchy, then I may use Tor. I mostly use Tor so I can visit Onion websites and see what's new on the black markets, because that's where everyone thinks they're safe, which is,
you are now on a list.
Valerie just said, yeah, you're now on a list. I'm always on a list. So I use Tor to look at Onion websites, but I will go to like a Starbucks in a city that is very, very far away from me. I will VPN into another country. I will hop on a Tor node there, and then I will hop onto another VPN, and then I will contact a single zombie on one of my botnets somewhere and be like, hey, I need you to pass this command to this zombie so it can do these things. And since everything I'm doing is text-based, I'm not trying to find a waifu on the internet like Gator. I am going through and I'm just passing text commands. So I don't care how slow it is, it's still going to be pretty fast. And then that way my connection is You can break and peel back all of those layers, but once you reach one of the zombies, figuring out where and what connected to that zombie to pass that information back is going to become infinitely more difficult depending on how many layers I build in.
All right, so there's so many topics which we jump off here. One of them, though, comes down to, like, let's just talk about the black markets. Oh my gosh, please, for the love of that, all it's gonna holy. This cracks me up because as someone who like manages one of the biggest breach databases in the world, like I think at this point we just passed like, oh, what was it, like 25 billion records in our dark web breach databases. So like LinkedIn and all these databases get breached. We have a cool service where like what we do is we grab it and we operationalize it for companies. That being said, is like all of these databases, they're not. I am not connecting to Tor to download these things. My speed would be atrocious to download like a 200 gigabyte text file of someone who did like a SQL dump. Like there's no reason for it. And ultimately, most of these sites are for profit. If you're a for-profit business, like illicit materials aside, if you're a for-profit business, why would you do it on Tor when the vast majority of people in the world buying these things have no idea how to use Tor? You're going to put it on a public-facing, the internet-facing open web because you get more customers that way. Like,
are you saying maybe on Discord?
Yeah. Oh gosh. So like, just for the sake of argument, like, Tor, like hidden marketplaces are often just memes. Like often general, the dark net is used by very specific people who like have no legit. That's a whole nother discussion. But open network like is just as gross as everywhere. Don't worry, the internet is just as gross on the open network as it is in the dark web. So the other one I wanted to talk about is which flips this. I don't know if there's a way of probably connecting this. Probably there is, but going towards like security, how most systems get breached, I think would be a good one. But ultimately, like here's the question I want to ask. As someone who's been doing pen testing, I'm going to open it up to the floor, open it up to comments too. Who do you think, like here's the dirtiest secret, probably the one I know. Who do you think is the worst security culprits when it comes to like bypassing security checks and not doing what you should be doing? Like across, when I've done an assessment on an entire network, who's the worst?
So I know the transition for this, and it is a very simple transition. They're called stupid people. Stupid people are the ones that go, as you were just aptly describing on Tor. It's the idiots that go on there and set up their own black markets to sell drugs and hitmen and prostitution and all this other stuff, thinking that they're secure. And that's why they're not secure, is because they're trusting a service they don't understand.
I'll ask it on the corporate network. Here, going on.
Yeah, I was going to say the context of this question is you're doing an assessment of a network, normal people doing normal jobs. Who in that environment is going to be the worst culprit of bad security?
Yep. Good way of phrasing it. Someone in chat already said it. System admin. There's the system admin right there. The worst people in security is IT security people. Specifically, like, because you think about this, is your security wise, you have a ton of responsibility. Like Gator would be the first person to say, like, who's like an Ansible expert at this point. Like he builds whole networks with one script. Your CI/CD pipelines, your whole developer pipeline, which is made to spin up production servers, needs to have the keys to the kingdom. In like the worst, like some of the typical targets I go after when I go on like an internal network is like the Beyond Trust password store, because they're never secured right, because they're spun up just to be secure, because they're security systems. So often it is the cybersecurity team, which is the worst culprits, because especially like lab and dev environments they spin up, they're never locked down because they don't have to follow policy. They're the ones who create the policy. So they can just go, we're going to do our own exception here. Gator?
Yep, it goes down to it's just a test network. This will never be used in production. Oh, we're going to just use the same password that we use in production. It'll be fine. It'll be transitionless when we push it to production.
And that's how you get SolarWinds.
Right? So if you can go after the people who have the keys of the kingdom, which are typically the sysadmins, that's or whatever management software. When you talk to like Linux admins, how many people that you know, like out of the people that are right here, do you guys have a password on your SSL key, or when you get ready
On
to
my
SSH to
SSH?
someplace else?
Oh,
SSH key.
100%.
Right.
Every one of them.
Yeah.
Right, every single one of them.
Yeah, no, I can actually say this definitively because I use a great. Now it's synced up. There's a great. By the way, not a sponsor, just like a tool I actually use and really like is Termius. Fantastic. It uses like the same similar security to like 1Password, but then yeah, every one of my keys has a password to it because you need that to decrypt your container, which has all your configuration in it. Like, yeah, absolutely.
I think I just put the link there. So it looks like Termius is the SSH client that works on desktop and mobile.
Yeah, it works
If that's not
mobile.
it-
It's full cross-platform too. Again, not
haven't
a
heard of
sponsor, not affiliate link. I just really like it. Windows, Linux, Mac, phone. Like I SSH all my systems and everything gets shared, which is great.
Right? So to your point though is, are you securing the keys to your kingdom as the sysadmin? And for me, getting into pen testing has always been, hey, if you know how to build it correctly, if you know how to deal with developers, because hey, they're just kind of sitting there just staring at the wall. Oh, they actually are producing something cool. Leave them alone. Make sure they get the tools that they need to do. Are your passwords secure? Or do you have everything in one gigantic text document on your desktop to where once you get breached because you clicked on something you shouldn't have, or you didn't lock your machine when you walked away, somebody could just flip your desktop or hide your icons. Other people could steal your shit and have access to the kingdoms. So
Wait,
make sure that you're using.
You keep saying passwords like we're supposed to use multiple.
So I mean, you have a very valid point there, and I've driven this out to where you need a unique password for everything that you do. That's why you need a password manager. Keep it local instead of doing one of the cloud ones. That's fine.
Yeah.
But you need to have unique things because when it comes to when you get
it was a
breached,
joke.
it's not if, it's when you get breached. You've got to make sure that you can find out which service actually got breached. And if you have unique passwords for each thing that you're using, now you're able to trace back instead of, oh shit, I got to go change this on every place. No, use unique passwords, please. Use a password manager.
The networks that I have is I run arcades. I build and design stores that run arcades, and I have these all over the world, and every store has a unique set of passwords that are used for that store. They all use the same automation process for deployment, but depending on where they're at and what it is, they request a different set of passwords from the password stores, and they get set up on the systems. I don't have common passwords. If you pop one store, you have access to that store. You don't have access to the global network. You don't have access to another store. You don't have anything but that store. And you would have to pop each individual server at that store because I don't use the same things across everything. Everything is different across the board. So if you gain access to one system, you have access to that system. You now need to figure out how to gain access to the next system and the next system and the next system. Is it possible to do? And is it possible to hit my templates and then get access to all the passwords? At some point, yes. You just have to go down the line far enough to find what the keys are to access the back ends to determine what all of the systems require. And once you hit that, then yes, you'll have access to everything. But it also comes back to low-hanging fruit as well. Could somebody that was persistent eventually hack into the networks that I designed? Yes. Everything is hackable. It's just a matter of time. Eventually, you could own my entire network, the entire global set of stores that I'm running, but you're going to be doing it for a long ass time, and you're probably going to get bored and move on to something else unless you think you can make a crap ton of money from my piddly ass stores.
That comes down to like the definition of security. Definition of security is like, given enough time, money, or resources, any system can be breached. So you want to make your system secure enough where the value of breaking in is not worth the time, money, or resources. Like very simply that.
So this decent segue, right? The dirtiest secret that I can think of, and this is like the dirtiest open secret is, and Silk and I were talking about this earlier this week. Everyone thinks like the elitist hackers use zero-day vulnerabilities to pop things. The most valuable treasure trove of information for hackers on the internet are CVE databases. because someone else has already done the work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And there are infinite numbers of unpatched systems out in the world. And so this is why they're like, oh, I have to scan the CVE database against all of my systems and then try to apply those patches. And then not actually apply all of them because maybe it breaks stuff. And that's where we come down. Like, if you've ever had to deal with stigging a system, so DISA is a defense information something, whatever, puts out these guidelines of how to secure a system and lock down a system. Things like remove all unused services and all that stuff. They put out what's called a STIG, which is this document that says, like, here's what you should do. Also known as a document that says, here's how to functionally break your computer.
Yes.
Yeah, seriously. And then you have to document all the exceptions to all of the things that you're not putting in. It's the same thing with CVE databases. Your CVE database has this huge treasure trove of information of every single vulnerability that's been disclosed across any number of things. There is no reason for me to utilize, like, I'll take a Windows vulnerability, like a Windows kernel vulnerability. I think Microsoft will give you like $500,000 if you can do, if you find and do a bug bounty. That's the word I was looking for. There's all kinds of bug bounties out there where companies will just pay you if you find vulnerabilities like that. And you could probably make more money faster doing the bug bounties than you can trying to sell those exploits on the illicit market. And that's a good thing. But if I'm an attacker, there's functionally no reason for me to go after those things because there's just this treasure trove of information in CVE databases. And so the dirty secret here is that no matter, like, let's say you want to get into this industry and you only want to do defense. Like, that's your thing. You want to make the world a safer place. You want to protect people from cyber criminals. Everything that you do can be utilized in an offensive manner. Every single thing. So, like, if you start publishing information, that information can be utilized by an attacker to subvert the system that you're.
The simplest one, like the most obvious one, is when you push a patch. Like, anytime a patch is pushed across the vast majority of popular software, the first thing people do, they don't download a patch to their system. They download it, they diff the original code, and they find out what was changed. This is how, like, a vast majority of Windows vulnerabilities, like exploitable vulnerabilities, are found. They push a patch, they do a diff, and go, what is all the things they fixed? Oh, they fixed this line and this line and this line. Oh, well, that line. And then they just legitimately just rip through it and say, like, where's copy string used? Like, was any of the patches, any of the diffs include like a copy string or a copy memory or anything like that? Is it an unchecked buffer? And then I'm going to go write the exploit. Like, this is done so frequently in the industry. The thing I'll pull back, though, and comment on it, these CVE databases, as terrifying as they are for an attacker and things like that, like Log4j. Let's take the fundamentally one of the biggest vulnerabilities that has ever occurred. Log4j. This is going to sound terrible, like whoop-de-doo. And I say whoop-de-doo specifically because while there was like nuance to it and sometimes log files, we now have detection for it. We have an ability to look through logs. We have an ability to see, like, we can now go, oh, yep, this system was popped by Log4j. Biggest, dirtiest secret I know is the ones that are fully undetectable is when some executive says, I don't want two-factor, and then he has a weak password. And he uses the same password everywhere on LinkedIn and everywhere else. And I log into his account using an IP address from his state. Like, not even like mind-blowing OSNs. Legitimately, he's in North Carolina. I'm going to put my IP address in North Carolina, just grab any proxy off the shelf, log into Office 365 using his account. Heck, he has two-factor. I'm going to just message him, send an SMS. Hey, we're doing a network upgrade. You're about to get a code. Please send it to me. Please message me back. Bam. Like, you were in his account, and guess how many alerts went off? None. Not a single alert went off. You are now in his email and now can do whatever you want. Like, social engineering low tech is by far the most terrifying thing in the industry. Take it one step further. You want to talk about like physical security, and you go to Black Hat, you go to DEF CON, and you see these like, here is how we broke into the company. We brought a ladder through. We did this. We copied someone's RFID. You know how like you really want to do a pen test, like you really want to scare the crap out of like a chief information security officer. You go to their cleaning staff or play minimum wage, and you offer them $10,000 to give you their key where it just it disappeared for the night. Like, how many of them are going to risk their job for 10 grand? Like, that takes them like 6 months to bind, and they're getting another job. Like, that is terrifying to me. Like, legitimately terrifying. That's what keeps me up at night. Insider threat is real. Like, legitimately, that anyone, like server rooms, like, it's not that much just to go, there we go. There's the dirty secret.
I mean, that one, oh, go ahead.
So how much would you bribe like the Fort Knox cleaning crew, just out of curiosity? just asking because I'm curious.
We're all on a list now. No, so that's actually, this is why underpaying like, as I say this from the perspective not of politics, but as a security, industry person. This is why underpaying workers is incredibly stupid. If you underpay your staff to the point that they do not care about the company that they work for, you have just created an insider threat. If you underpay someone, you have given them an incentive to screw you over.
The insider threat thing is a real deal. And depending on your paranoia, depending on how much security you need physically versus online, there are so many levels and layers. And I think that's a dirty secret, is that you don't just have a security team and then you're secure. There are so many aspects to this to where you have to actually do work by finding out what your risks are and finding out it's the whole risk model, right? If you can make sure that you find out where your data is that makes your business work, you're able to then start learning how to protect that. And that's going to be different for different people in different organizations. It may be somebody physical be able to get into the building, but should they really have keys to the server room for the cleaning crew? Probably not. If it's your sysadmins or your backup admins, yeah. So it comes down to access control. And these are some of the things that you learn over time. But go ahead, Gulo.
You have to do risk assessments for all of those things. And yes, you should have different things separated out. But it's not just about money either. You need to keep your employees semi-happy. You need to make sure they don't hate the company. And if you take a look at like Kellogg's and their whole spat with the workers' unions and stuff, how much money do you think you would have had to pay one of those workers to cross the line, go back in there, and then plug in something into one of their ASICs, their SLCs, something in some of their machinery that just overwrites everything, blows up the plant, destroys the machinery? You could have given them $1. You could have given them 50 cents and been like, this will screw them over. Go plug this in. And they will just go do it because they hate the company so much at that point. And it's an insider threat. You can't always protect against insider threats. There's always going to be bad actors somewhere. There's always going to be some sociopath that you accidentally hired that just wants to watch the world burn.
And insert Gulo's face. Okay. Probably a good place. It's interesting, though. They're ultimately, me and Gowrie were laughing back and forth because we're like, okay, let's talk about how how information goes from my screen right here over to them. And I think we need to spend a stream talking about it because what's so funny to me is there is so many breakpoints in between. And after we had talked about it for like a half an hour, 40 minutes, we started laughing. We're like, yeah, you know what we didn't actually consider anywhere here is like physical or social engineering or all the other layers on top of this thing that we haven't even like mentioned that are broken. So fundamentally, everything is broken and everything can be hacked. And with that, let's start talking and wrapping up. Gator, what's your parting shot? What is the dirtiest secret you have?
The dirtiest secret I have, I'm not sharing on stream while we're recording, but in the industry would be everybody has skeletons in the closet. And just because your organization that you're currently at or that you're looking to get hired at seems bad, the next organization is also going to have secrets that are dirty. And that's going to be something that you find again and again. So be prepared to actually do the work, document what you're doing, and then make sure to go love your hacker family.
The dirtiest secret that I know is that the more cybers you attach to your job description, the more money you will make. So go out there and be a cyberer of cybering the cybers and make a lot of money. And with that, Gulo.
I just learned this one a couple of weeks ago. Smelling is just tasting at a distance.
Yep. That's a pretty dirty secret.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for joining us on a Saturday. It's 2022, which I'm going to take me probably till March to remember that one. Ultimately, there's a lot of dirty secrets in our industry. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday morning. Thank you for watching, and hack on.